Hi guys, welcome to the introduction to Git. So in this video, we're going to be looking at Git and what you do with Git, who founded Git and stuff like that. All right, let's go. Yeah, can you see this face? Does it look familiar to you? His name is Linus Torvalds. He invented Git. Do you know that? Well, he's also the founder of Linux, the operating system, the open source project. Similar to like Windows or Mac OS. So basically the operating system that runs your computer. So Windows, if you're working with Windows, that was the Windows operating system. But if you're in Linux, then this guy introduced the first open source project that have been developed over time. So what is open source? Open source is basically just saying that a project that was developed in collaboration with other people, right? So when they develop the software, they've opened it up so you can have access to the source code and build on top of it, right? So that's why it's the open source project. For a closed project, you don't have access to the source code or the files that were used to build that project. All right, so that's why this is open source, because you have access to the original code that was written to build the software. Git as well is similar. So what is Git? Git allows us to keep track of changes in your files or in our files into your code, right? And so imagine we add a line of code, delete multiple lines. Git can track the entire history of your project from the beginning to your current position, making it easy to go back to your previous versions and correct mistakes if something is not working. So I'm going to break that down, right? So basically, think about it like you're working on a website. So let's say you're working on your HTML website right now, or you're building a simple website, and then you're writing your code on Visual Studio Code, right? And then as you're writing your code, you're changing files, like you're changing something. So let's say you started with H1 and you say, okay, I want my heading to be H1. But then along the line, you decided that you don't want your heading to be H1. You want it to be H3, right? So Git allows you to be able to track the history. So let's say you forget what you did, like maybe 10 steps after. With Git, you can go back to your previous version. You can say, oh, okay, what did I do when I started my Visual Studio Code? Like when I opened my Visual Studio Code, did I change from H1 to H2 or H2 to H3? Like, what did I do, right? So Git allows you to be able to track it, so you don't have to guess it, right? It keeps a memory log of the things that you're doing. So it's almost like a snapshot, like it's taking a snapshot of everything you're doing, and you can go back and revert to previous versions of your code or the things that you're writing. So basically that's what Git is. And people have said that Git is for only smart people, right? And it's for it makes you feel less intelligent. That used to be the case, but not anymore. Right now anyone can write with Git. Git also allows you and makes it possible for people to collaborate on projects, right? And make sure that all the files that you're collaborating on are in sync. The idea is that you can have people in different locations, right? So imagine you have 5 people working on a website, or 1,000 people working on an open source project from different countries. So one person is in India, one is in Ghana, some people are in Nigeria. You need a way to be able to manage changes, right? And keep track of what people are doing and updating the code changes. So let's say somebody's writing the heading in India, somebody else is working on the forms or the list in Ghana or Nigeria, and somebody else is working on how this works in Canada. You need a way to be able to track what people are doing. You need a way to be able to track the code and what people are doing. So Git allows that to be possible for you to be able to track the changes in your code, right? And that's so super cool, because it would have been very difficult to track without a kind of a tool that allows you to be able to see what people are doing and making sure that things are in sync. So if I write a heading, I don't want to have clashes in code. You can be able to manipulate and manage code using Git. And finally, Git allows you to test your code without losing the original copy of your website and mobile app project, right? So you can experiment with your code without losing the main copy. So you can have the main thing in your Git repository, which I'll explain what that's in a bit. But you can also, without that, you can actually say, you know what, I want to just test a portion of the code. I want to test a portion of the part of the code, and Git allows you to be able to do that. All right. Also, there's GitHub. So people always confuse Git with GitHub. They're kind of different a little bit, but I'll explain that in a bit. So GitHub is just a website that stores Git repositories. Repositories is something you hear a lot in GitHub, right? Or in Git. So it's just, repositories is just files and folders. Just think about it as files and folders, just like your folder. It's just called a repository, right? So Git is a website that stores Git repositories on the internet, right? It allows you and other people around the world to see and view your Git repositories, your Git files and folders on the internet. So it allows you and other people to be able to view your Git repositories on the internet. And finally, you can host your website on Git or allow other services to connect to it. So you can actually host your HTML page right now on GitHub Pages, which I'll show you in a bit. And that's exciting. So you wouldn't have to send screenshots. You can actually send a link and we can actually go and view your page, your website page. So you can actually view your website on GitHub for free, or you can also allow allow other services to connect to your GitHub that are hosting your website. So that's super cool. All right. So basically, that's a brief overview of what Git is. We're going to go into writing the code and kind of installing Git and going through GitHub, websites and stuff like that in the next video. All right, guys, I'll see you in the next video.